In this session, we'll discuss setup of the equipment costing, purchase order, and inventory accounting options. We can access the equipment costing setup window by selecting Equipment Costing from the Setup Accounting Options menu, or by right-clicking on the Equipment Costing menu icon and selecting the Setup option. We now have a few options for our Equipment Costing module. The first is a series of default general ledger accounts. We can enter account numbers for equipment expense, internal usage, and external usage. The question at the bottom of the screen has to do with entering equipment usage logs during payroll timesheet entry. The program gives you the ability to enter equipment time that was used at the same time that timesheets are being entered. Some people would like to go ahead and post that usage log entry at the time of payroll posting. Others would prefer to save the equipment usage log entries made during timesheet entry and then do a centralized posting of usage logs from the equipment costing module. Use this checkbox to indicate which of these options you prefer. We can access the Purchase Order Setup window by selecting Purchase Order from the Setup Accounting Options menu, or by right-clicking on the Purchase Order menu icon and selecting the Setup option. When purchase orders are being entered, certain dates can be supplied for tracking purposes. The first of these dates is the purchase order date. This will always be required. However, other dates are optional and can be included on the purchase orders at the user's discretion. These include the acceptance date, the delivery date, and the deadline date. If these boxes are checked, all those dates will show up on the purchase order entry screen and on the printed purchase order. If this box is checked, the system will remind you of other vendors who sell the identical item you're currently ordering. Check this box if you want the system to include line numbers on purchase order line items. This may come in handy if you generate purchase orders with lots of line items. When you're communicating with the vendor and wish to refer to a specific line item on the purchase order, it's nice to be able to say, "Let's look at line item number 43 on the purchase order." If you prefer not to have these line items numbered, uncheck this box. Here you can indicate whether the program should check for duplicate purchase order numbers during purchase order entry. Check this box to have the system warn you if a purchase order line item will push the selected cost code over budget. If this next box is checked, then during purchase order line item entry, the system will check to see if the unit price you've indicated for the selected item matches the stored unit price for this vendor and this item in the item price file. If there is not a price for this vendor and item in the file, or if the indicated unit price is different from the unit price stored in the file, the system will ask if you wish to store the unit price for later use. This next checkbox allows you to specify whether the program should automatically assign a new purchase order number to each purchase order entered. If this is the case, you can specify the next available purchase order number here. Each time a new purchase order is entered, this number will be incremented by 1. Here you can indicate a default tax rate, ship-to type, and detail type for newly entered purchase orders. If this box is checked, the system will not mark purchase orders as fully reconciled when they are reconciled with an accounts payable invoice. Most people do not check this box. This setting refers to the reconciliation of purchase orders during accounts payable invoice entry. As a new invoice is being inserted, the invoice entry program operates in either of two modes. It can ask for a vendor number and a name and allow the user to insert invoice line items, or it can require a valid purchase order number and automatically create invoice line items that correspond to the purchase order line items. If the purchase order system has been installed, the system will ask as each invoice is inserted whether or not this invoice will reconcile an existing purchase order. Optionally, you can instruct the invoice entry program to always use the first or second mode of operation. Select the desired purchase order printing format here. If you select FormMaker as the purchase order format, you must specify the file name of your desired purchase order printing program here. If the standard purchase order form is selected, you can specify a logo to be printed on the purchase order here. We can access the Inventory Setup window by selecting Inventory from the Setup Accounting Options menu, or by right-clicking on the Inventory menu icon and selecting the Setup option. This screen allows you to set up inventory options. First, you can specify general ledger accounts for inventory and for cost of goods sold. Now you can select an inventory relief method. Select from FIFO, LIFO, average cost, last cost, and standard cost methods. Here you can indicate whether the operator should be able to modify the cost of goods sold while entering inventory pick tickets and accounts receivable invoices. Lastly, you can have the system automatically assign inventory pick ticket numbers with these settings. This concludes this session regarding equipment costing, purchase order, and inventory setup.